Howard University was the largest African American university in the South. It led in graduating psychologists out of all the African American schools. Between 1919 and 1938, 20 students enrolled in the psychology department in Howard University alone, while only 36 African Americans were enrolled in a psychology program in the entire nation. Psychology was taught in 3 quarters at Howard University. Courses were designed and created by Dr. Sumner, Dr. Max Means, and a graduate student named Frederick Watts. These courses helped blacks succeed in white universities. They prepped students for language exams by teaching them readings in German and French psychology. Students at Howard University were often scared that their education wasn't as good as people outside their college. But Sumner had 3 goals to help them prepare for the future. 1 was to help students achieve their professions. 2, to teach cultural significance of psychology. 3, prep students for masters and doctorates. Mrs. Maureen Winslow Brett, class of 1944, was an important figure in the psychology class. She was the first to receive the Dodson Award for exceptional distinction. J. Henry Alston was the first African American to publish an original research effort in an APA journal. He received his master's in experimental psychology, but later switched to education and administration due to lack of jobs in experimental psychology. African Americans would also sometimes travel to Europe to receive their graduate training. Gilbert Haven Jones was one of these people. He received his master's in philosophy in Europe and was the first African American to teach philosophy in America. These are a few of the amazing African American psychologists in the earlier days, but the training of blacks was still minuscule compared to white psychologists. Out of the 3,767 PhDs for psychology in the entire nation, between 1920 and 1966, only 8 of them were black psychologists.
Charles Henry Thompson, 1896 to 1980. He was the first black American to receive a doctorate degree in educational psychology in 1925. Albert Sidney Beckham, 1897 to 1964. He got his master's degree in psychology in 1917, his PhD in psychology from NYU in 1930, developed the minimum levels of intelligence for certain occupations report, and throughout his career, David Beckham published multiple African American studies. Robert Prentice Daniel, 1902 to 1968. He got his master's degree in education in 1928, PhD in educational psychology from Columbia University in 1932. Inez Beverly Prosser, 1897 to 1943, received her master's degree in educational psychology from University of Colorado. In 1933, she got her PhD in educational psychology, and she was the first black American woman to receive this PhD. Howard Hale Long, 1888 to 1948, master's degree from Clark University in experimental psychology in 1916. He served in the First World War as an infantry first lieutenant in Europe. He got his doctorate degree in educational psychology from Harvard. He was the first to get this degree from Harvard in 1933, and his work was quoted a lot in the field of psychometry. Ruth Winfred Howard, 1900 to 1997. She was the first black American woman in the United States to receive a PhD in psychology from the University of Minnesota in 1934. She also had another PhD in child development. Martin David Jenkins, 1904 to 1978. First black American to be awarded a fellowship to pursue graduate studies at Northwestern University and got his doctorate in 1935. His dissertation, a socio-psychological study of Negro children of superior intelligence, and his other studies became classics in educational psychology.
Alberta Boehner Turner. She got an MS degree in education in 1931 from Ohio State University, and 1935 her PhD in psychology from OSU, and spent 27 years at Ohio Bureau of Juvenile Research and then later from clinical psychologist to chief, later became director of research for Ohio Youth Commission, and wrote The Effects of Practice on the Perception and Memorization of Digits Presented in Single Exposure, as well as a psychologist at the Juvenile Diagnostic Center, past, present, and future, and now holds the diplomatic status in clinical psychology. Carlton Benjamin Goodlett earned his BS degree in psychology from Howard University and his master's in abnormal psychology from University of California at Berkeley, and was the first African American to do so. He wrote a dissertation on a comparative study of adolescent interests in two socioeconomic groups, and in 1938 earned his PhD in psychology. He ended up teaching educational psychology at West Virginia State College, and later became the president of several programs in San Francisco, like Boy Scouts of America, the NAACP of San Francisco, the Foundation to Study Our Schools, and many more. He also came up with two deadly menaces to African Americans: alcohol/drug addiction, and racism. Herman George Kennedy earned his MA degree in clinical psychology. He also wrote his master thesis on the effects of rapport on the IQ and study in racial psychology, which are now known as classics in the psychology departments. Ended up becoming the chairman of the psych department at West Virginia State College, and also became the nation's leading black college in psychological research. Some significant resources he's published include Adapting Education to the Abilities and Needs and Interests of Negro College Students, Individual Differences and Their Educational Significance in the Guidance of the Gifted and Talented Children, and also wrote his dissertation on Test Standing and Social Setting, a comparative study of the intelligence test scores of Negroes living under varied environmental conditions. And recently, in 1950, became the diplomat for the American Board of Examiners in Professional Psychology.